Okay, so we are live via Zoom and in person here. What marvelous technology. Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. This is a wonderful in-person turnout, as well as folks online to come and listen to a presentation in regards to the future of Rossmoor as it relates to capital projects. My name's Jeff Matheson. I'm the Director of Resident Services. I've been with Golden Rain Foundation almost 12 years now, so been here for a while. Today we will be reviewing the Facilities Master Plan that has been in development for a little over a year now. This is the first Facilities Master Plan that Golden Rain Foundation has undertaken. And it is an important document to help with planning for future major projects. I want to clarify that right from the beginning, just in case you don't see something of interest that gets covered. This is really focused on major projects, such as the building we're in now, renovation of or replacement of the MOD building, those kind of projects. We also have what is called a long-range capital plan that addresses smaller projects, such as our machinery and equipment, streets and roads, replacement of components of a building, say a renovation of a restroom, flooring, roofing, or new smaller projects. So you may not see something here today. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just might mean that it is on a long-range plan. Today, we're really focusing on our major capital improvements. Before we get started, I want to introduce, we do have our board president, Dwight Walker, with us today. I just want to give Dwight an opportunity to say a few words before we get started. Maybe.
Thanks, Jeff. So welcome, everybody. I just want to say this is a huge project that was undertaken a year ago. You know, it was a comprehensive look by our consultant, CLS, to make sure that Rossmoor remains a vibrant community, active adult community moving forward. So it's a long-range look into the future, resulted in a major tool, both for staff and for the board and for residents to take a look at what might be considered for the future. I want to acknowledge a couple people. There are a ton of people involved in this project. But first of all, Leanne Hamaji, who's sitting right there, chair of the planning committee, did a great job. And then Tim O'Keefe, who's in the back, always helping us with things. And Joel Lesser, I don't think he is here, CFO, did some amazing work from a financial standpoint with this. And of course, Jeff Matheson. So thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Dwight. So today we hope to go over a few things. We'll talk about the goals of the 10-year capital plan, how we got here, some of the community involvement that was conducted, some focus groups, a lot of our work with the planning committee. We'll talk about some of the resident survey as part of that input, a little bit about the criteria that was used to evaluate projects. We'll go over all of the projects that were considered by major site areas. And then as it was narrowed down to specific selected projects that were categorized into near-term, long-term, pipeline, which is basically beyond 10 years, and things that were classified more as maintenance that would belong on that other list that I talked about. And then what we called a wish list item. Something to keep around on the discussion, but may not be done for a period of time. And then we'll have some time at the end for some questions and answers. So the goals of the capital improvement plan and the process. Certainly we wanted to have a process that had a lot of public involvement. We wanted to hear from the residents about priorities, about potential projects. We wanted to create a vision that was really sound in a good business plan. Think about designs for not only the present, but for the future. This plan needs to be flexible. It is a planning document. It is a roadmap. It is not something that is supposed to be written in stone or that is not adapted as things change, the environment change. So we want it to be flexible. So first, a master plan. This is really, as I mentioned, a planning tool for the planning committee, the board of directors, and for the community. It's a tool to help determine what major projects should be undertaken in a 10-year window. That is a rolling 10-year window, so as we progress, new projects would be added on. It is intended to be a flexible plan that is evaluated on an annual basis to determine what new projects need to be added, what adjustments need to be made as we learn more about a project scope. So it is intended to be very flexible. As a planning tool, it helps link projects and cost estimates to our financial trust estate fund, which is comprised mainly of the membership transfer fee. So it helps us analyze, the finance committee analyze how much that transfer fee should be in order to accomplish goals as defined in the facilities master plan. So how we got to this point today where we have a draft plan for the board to consider, first we did information gathering. We had a kickoff meeting. We held a community forum that many of you attended. Our consultant team of ELS and their various sub-consultants did site visits. They walked all of the facilities. They did a review of all of our drawings and plans and any documents that we have, such as previous studies. Again, the community outreach. They reviewed current projects that we have planned, such as the pickleball project. And finally, they looked at trends in other senior active adult communities. We then went on to plan development, where we held workshops. We identified some facility goals, defined more of the project scopes, developed some narratives around each of those projects, worked those into some very high-level cost estimates. Again, a lot of presentations ongoing to the finance committee, the planning committee, and the board of directors. Once those projects started to become a little more defined and cost estimates developed, we did some funding analysis. We reviewed the trust estate fund in detail. The trust estate fund includes revenue from membership transfer fees on an annual basis. It used to include rental income from the medical center. There are various components that are committed to the trust estate fund, such as 3 of our outstanding loans used for facilities such as this, Creekside, the fitness center. It includes commitments to our ongoing long-term capital plan, which also includes our machinery and equipment. So they reviewed that in terms of what is our future capacity to complete large-scale projects. From that, in working with the finance committee, they developed further recommendations, more presentations to both finance and planning. And then finally, that got worked down to our final plan, where they prepared findings, a draft report that has been to the board, some commitments. We plan to bring the final reports for consideration at the end of this month, and then today's presentation. So back to the beginning, who we met with. Okay, we had community meetings, one at the beginning, a second one was held in this room on June 14th. We talked about indoor activities, outdoor activities. We asked people to dream about the future. At this point, we weren't concerned about the financial commitments or what things may cost. We simply wanted to know what are the priorities, what are the interests, what are the dreams of the community on future facilities or upgrades to facilities. We then broke it down to some focus groups, and we held individual meetings. Those focus groups included some club representatives from indoor activities. So the Performing Arts Guild, the workshop representatives from the workshops at Gateway, those type of folks, we invited them to more of a focus group session. We then met with representatives from all of the outdoor activities, golf, tennis, bocce, lawn bowling, interest in pickleball. And finally, with some of the MOD staff, as renovation of the MOD facilities is one of the projects. We did a community survey and received 553 responses. We received a pretty broad spectrum of interests in all of the various activity areas. Walking came up, the RV lots, bicycles, golf, some with transportation. So there was a broad range of interests represented. We began then on developing some prioritization criteria to help define the projects and narrow down the scope of some of those projects, especially within the 10-year window. The process to narrow down the scope was very extensive. So we started broad, started to introduce the financial models, continue to work through the process with the planning committee until we arrived at the final recommendation for the 10-year window. But some of the areas of consideration in prioritization included accessibility, any safety codes or compliance issues, existing deficiency in our facilities, some community desire, certainly emerging trends. We started to look at overall construction costs and impact to operational costs, which would be your coupon. This plan, I had a question this morning. So this plan actually is focused only on Golden Rain Foundation property. This does not include any of the mutuals at all. So if you look at this map, you see that we have everything from MOD out to Buckeye, Hillside on the other side. This is all of the Golden Rain Foundation property. So starting to look at some of our individual facilities, we start at Gateway. And one of the main things that came up was an interest in a town square. This was really focused on the plaza outside of Peacock Hall. So a plaza that had shade covering. We already have somewhat of a plaza there, but something with a permanent shade cover, a built-in stage, sound, lighting, furnishings, upgraded landscaping, and so forth. A real place for the community to gather. We've started to do some of that stuff on a smaller scale. Hopefully some of you have been to the Tuesday evening food trucks and so forth. Some of this is being addressed through programming. Other interests at this area included, to the right there, a cafe and some expansion of the NPR rooms. If you look at the size room that receives the most interest in Rossmoor, the most rentals, it is those NPR rooms. Those are heavily used. The size seems to be just about right for many of the clubs. So we looked at expanding the availability of those size rooms and adding a small cafe. In looking at many of the other communities of Rossmoor's size for active adults, food was a major factor. Most had more than one restaurant facility. Currently, we only have Creekside Grill. So adding a cafe was of interest. So that would all take place at Gateway. We also looked at the upgrade of the fireside kitchen as well. See, we then looked at Hillside. Hillside was built in the 60s. It is one of the oldest facilities that we have here in Rossmoor. It certainly is showing a little bit of its age and ready for some upgrades. Some of the main things that take place there include larger meetings in Diablo, which has been upgraded somewhat. But then also we have this emerging use by the Performing Arts Guild in the Los Trompos room. So we looked at an option for replacing a wing of the Hillside complex, expanding the Los Trompos room to create a smaller theater for all of the groups that use that for performing arts, for smaller performances, for practice, and so forth. Keeping the Vista room, and then connecting on to that, the replacement of the Mat House. If you go up to Hillside, one of the main challenges up at Hillside is accessibility. So we looked at accessibility for this complex in terms of Sportsman's Park, accessibility to the covered barbecue area, as well as to the bocce courts, accessibility down to the mat house and to the lawn bowling greens, and we'll talk about the pool here in a second. So, one of the main areas that we began focusing in on, especially as funding started to become more evident, was the need to upgrade the mutual operations facilities. Mutual operations is where everything from our auto mechanic operates, our bus service operates. It has a warehouse for all of the landscape and building division. It houses our finance department, as well as mutual operations, human resources, and IT. So it is really the main hub of activity. The building there is really a converted warehouse. It is at max capacity, has numerous maintenance issues. So one of the main projects to focus on is upgrading this facility. And we looked at a number of ways to do that, but this is a significant project. Again, back to Hillside a little bit. We looked at Hillside Pool Complex. There was an idea of a playground being added alongside. This is an example where we said, let's dream a little bit. What are things outside the box that aren't typical or haven't been thought of? And the consultants came up with a playground. I think they also had thrown out a miniature golf facility. These are facilities that, as we worked through the process and prioritization, they certainly became lower priorities and eventually were not even added to the final plan. But we kept them in the report just for sake of documenting all of the things we thought about. But also up at Hillside, we looked at the pool building. The locker rooms need to be replaced or upgraded in the near future, as well as accessibility came up to the pool itself as far as a ramp into the pool or a better lift and access into the pool. Dollar Clubhouse right across the way, built in the 30s, the original farmhouse for the Dollar family that owned the property. This clubhouse has been renovated over the years into a clubhouse. There are two main areas of concern. One is the exterior accessibility to the rear patio and access into the building from the rear of the building. And then the building itself, there's no access to the second floor, so potential elevator. The building itself needs significant upgrades in terms of code compliance and mechanical, lighting, kitchen finishes, seismic upgrades, and so forth. Very significant project. Again, this is another example alongside dollar where it's a little bit of a dream type, what's outside the box. We came up with an amphitheater. Right now, we hold concerts out on a portable stage that has been there for probably about 15 years. And we bring out chairs, and it functions okay. But what if we had a permanent amphitheater with built-in seating, a stage, lighting, backstage area to replace that, and we were able to do more robust outdoor programming. So this was an idea. Again, we kept it on the list for documenting the process, but this was one that didn't end up making the list. So as we worked through the process, we started to come down to categorizing some of these projects that did make the list. And we looked at immediate need. So within the next 2 years, what types of projects fell into immediate need? The rear of dollar, making that more accessible. We're working on the Gateway Studio renovation phase 2. Phase 1 was completed already. And phase 2 is for the art studio, the wood shop, and the lapidary. The board is committed resources to the water reclamation study. We have not committed resources to construction of that, only for the study. Pickleball courts, everybody's favorite topic, pickleball courts. We are still progressing with that and looking at that. There's funding in this year's capital budget for that. We already accomplished the surfacing of the bocce courts, but there are other improvements. And then access control is kind of a campus-wide project that we have begun work on and will continue. And then in the near-term category fell the MOD office building that I discussed. That again is a very significant project. If you look at all of these projects, the one that made the list that is a extensive major project is the MOD complex. So outside that 10-year funding window, some of the things that are still out there, we categorize as pipeline, meaning more or less the next up, or if funding becomes available. Water reclamation, actual construction, improvements to dollar in terms of the seismic upgrades, the systems, elevator to the second floor and finishes. Replacement of the hillside pool building and renovation, Gateway, the cafe concept and replacement of the NPRs, expansion of those. And then continuing the conversion of the median islands. That's actually something that probably will get funded in ongoing through that long-range plan. So we've already converted one of the median islands from turf to different landscape material, similar to what's outside the gate as you approach. In the maintenance category, the emergency access road, there is consideration for funding for that next year, and then drought management projects. Move to a wish list, so just to keep on the project schedule, but more of a wish list if funding one day becomes available, would be to add a ramp into Hillside Pool, expand the pool and add a ramp. Creating a shade structure over the ends of the lawn bowling greens. Replace the Hillside East Wing and mat house that we discussed, and then improvements to Sportsman's Park as far as accessibility to the facilities from the parking lot. So as we narrowed down and worked with the Finance Committee looking at available funding and those priority projects, we looked at the selected projects totaling about 21 million, excuse me, and then the projects in that pipeline being another 33 million, maintenance projects being a little over $1 million, the total projects identified being 56 million in that 10-year window. And that, again, that does not include the long-range plan projects, such as machinery and equipment, upkeep of existing facilities. So that is in addition to that 56 million. The Finance Committee considered this, excuse me, the Finance Committee evaluated this in terms of what available resources we have through the membership transfer fee. And one of their recommendations was to increase that fee to $12,000 and then increase it gradually by $500 annually. So you'll see that over the years, that membership transfer fee begins to grow. So it helps cover the gap of what is needed in order to accomplish the identified projects. We still will reach a point where in 2027, if we do the MOD building, that there may need to be some borrowing is in addition, but we would have the capacity to do those borrowing based on the increased membership transfer fee. One of the most valuable tools that emerged from this study that will be a tool we can use ongoing is this spreadsheet. And this is a spreadsheet we could use to add new projects, to evaluate the impact of changes to the membership transfer fee or loans. As you'll see here at the top, these are projects in the immediate need category. So something that would be done in actually in 2023, or some are committed this year. This is the MOD in 2027. It's about an $18 million project. And then under maintenance, these items for the access road and then drought management. You'll see down here we have the long-term capital improvement project that I mentioned. Again, these are the funds that go towards just the capital upkeep of GRF facilities, and that is accounted for on an annual basis here. Here, so we come to the total commitment then for the Trust Estate Fund. So on an annual basis, the Planning Committee and the board will use this as a tool to determine what new projects will roll into it, what adjustments need to be made. For example, the meeting before this was with the Planning Committee talking about water reclamation. That is another huge project, about $18 million project. How will that fit into this overall plan? So we could use this spreadsheet to make those adjustments. We could use this spreadsheet to justify any changes to the membership transfer fee as we move forward. So it is a flexible tool. It's a planning tool that could be used on an annual basis and could continue to roll forward as we move forward. Okay, I've been talking at you a long time. Hopefully I covered a bit. Where we are right now is we have a draft plan that was developed by ELS. It's been presented to the Planning Committee. It's been presented to the board for the first introduction. They wanted to have this forum to give an overview, and then it will be back to the board for consideration for adoption. The most important thing I think I could leave you with is that it is a flexible tool, a planning tool, something that could be updated, used to justify, used for the community and the board to plan what will be coming next. Happy to answer any questions, and we do probably have a few folks on Zoom. We'll see if they have some questions as well. We do have a microphone kind of placed in the middle here, so if you want to approach that with questions.
Hello, my name is Mary England, and I've been following this process with great interest. My concern is the use of ranking and rating projects related to the prioritization criteria. I noticed that 2 projects that are termed maintenance, the emergency access road and the drought management projects, are both called maintenance. That doesn't make sense when they relate to the highest priority criteria, which was accessibility and safety and code. So would you address how come they are considered maintenance?
So maintenance is in terms of this plan, maintenance is a very, very broad term, but you could say that the maintenance of the road, there is a emergency access road that exists today. So this would be upgrading that road so that it functions for emergency coordination. And the drought management plan is taking care of our existing facilities to better address drought conditions. So it could be classified as maintenance, but again, that's a very broad term. The important thing is that it is on the list for consideration of funding next year.
My name is Bruce Poster, and first I want to acknowledge the good work that everybody has done on the board and the staff. It's a very sophisticated project, and I'm impressed with what you've done. Typically, as part of a project like this, there's a needs assessment, and maybe that's implicit to your work, but I didn't hear much about that. So let me pick on pickleball for an example. Some people think there's a need for more courts. Other people have witnessed a lot of empty courts much of the time. So how have you made the decision that there truly is a need for additional courts?
That's a great question, and needs assessment often is used for more commercial or city public type facilities. Rossmoor really is based more on interest. If you did a specific needs assessment based on percentage of the population that uses golf or that uses lawn bowling or that uses the fitness center, you probably wouldn't be able to justify those facilities just based on those numbers. But with the whole shared cost system that Rossmoor has, we're able to provide a vast array of amenities for the residents, and those costs are shared by all. So if you look at the 500 plus members of the pickleball community, their interests and those that will follow them to have that amenity is comparable to any of our other facilities that we have. So that's kind of how Rossmoor works to a degree. It's a little bit different than a typical needs assessment that you would do for outside the gate.
I don't see any reason for it to be different, and it seems to me that the right way to go about doing that would be to gather some data at different times of day, different days of the week, say again pickleball, what percentage of the courts are in use at different times. And if it's shown that often the courts are at capacity, then I would support having more courts. But if it's demonstrated that there's a lot of unutilized capacity, then I would encourage the members to play at different times of day to better utilize what's already there. Thank you.
I know there's probably a lot of very specific interest on individual projects. We'll try and answer some of those, but if we could keep a little more broad to the overall plan. Just to answer that, again, if you went with that approach with Rossmoor, it would be hard to justify any project. Right now, we're doing renovation of the Gateway Studios. The number of people that use those studios for the investment that we're making there, that wouldn't qualify under that same criteria. So it is a different way of going about providing the broad array of amenities. Yes, sir.
My name is Stefford Veltema, and I noticed the absence of any mention of RV dump station in this presentation. A community survey showed considerable support for replacing the RV dump station that was removed when the new recycle and disposal facility was built. And this was recognized in previous plans as in presentations as a maintenance item for the future, including the recent event in this building.
So as we went through the plan and looked at overall funding and narrowing down and categorizing projects, some projects we're seeing more as that would belong on the long-term plan, or that might be part of an overall renovation of the MOD area, that complex. But as an individual large-scale project, that wouldn't really apply to the facilities master plan. So moving forward, that would be more applicable to our long-range plan, and if the board and the planning committee decided to apply funding towards that.
While we're considering all kinds of new things to do, I would just reemphasize that this would be restoring a facility that was removed in the past. I think that's pretty rare here in Rossmoor that a facility would be removed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marianne Clark, and I think it's an excellent idea to have a master plan. I hadn't felt in the past that we were really looking to the future and planning ahead. So I like that idea. I'm concerned about the Dollar House patio. I see that it's an immediate plan, and I'd like to just reiterate what I've said before, that I'd really like an historic architect to review any changes to the patio and to the interior, exterior of the house. From my experience in looking at other historic residents like the Tow House in Danville, Eugene O'Neill's house, it's historic, and any renovation done to the exterior patios have been done in brick. And this house has a history of brick. And I don't think that concrete in the patio is a good idea. I don't know what the plan is yet, and I'd like to know what it is going forward and have some input on that. Because I'm very concerned that that lawn area will be changed drastically, and it's so beautiful the way it is. It's very peaceful and beautiful, beautifully designed. And I would just hate to see something happen to that. So I'd like to hear anything that you have in mind in terms of historic architects reviewing that space.
So let me try and answer that question in terms of the overall process and projects. None of these projects have been designed yet. None of these projects have been approved to proceed with yet. This is just a overall high-arching plan. As we get to a project and the board decides to proceed with that, then we begin a planning process. That would typically include public outreach, review, we hire a design team, plans are developed, approved, very public process for how we go about designing facilities and moving forward. So if the board says, yes, next year we want to fund that particular project with the basic scope, then we would hire an architect, begin the design process. There would be input. It would go to the planning committee, the board. So there would be plenty of opportunity for input on how to do a project, what should be included, and so forth. So that applies really to all of the projects.
Okay, I just get a little nervous when I hear the term design, because it's already been designed. What has to happen with an historic building is that it needs to be replaced exactly the way it was, unless there are things like restrooms that need to be updated. So that's all I have to say.
My name is Jared Fine, and thank you so much. Planning process is a delicate matter. Requires a lot of participation, a lot of expertise. So I congratulate you, and I also want to congratulate you on how accessible all this information is to us. The website that you set up, the executive summary, and this presentation. I have two simple questions. I don't know what an access control system is. Maybe you could define that. And then I have a second question.
Sure. We've been working on access control for our facilities for a few years now, but we're really launching into that. We've replaced the system at the front gate. We haven't rolled that out to the community yet, but that is increasing security and accountability for vehicles coming in through the gate and in our tracking of those. It will be upgrading the access at our facilities, such as the fitness center, for golf, and for other facilities, to make sure they're for and used by residents.
Okay, so basically it's the security system.
Exactly.
I understand. Second question I have is water reclamation. I noticed that that fell into the pipeline category. And unless I misunderstood, the pipeline seems more long range, whereas water reclamation seems like something we ought to start yesterday. So maybe you could comment on that.
Yeah, water reclamation is a very interesting one. The board is committed to the funding and has approved funding for about the last 5 years to complete studies. It is a highly regulated, very complex project, so it will take some time. So they have continued to support funding the study. Construction of that facility being in the $18 million range now. We just presented an update of costs to the planning committee. The funding hasn't been identified yet. So it's in the pipeline, and pipeline really are projects that once we identify funding, we can add to the list. So maybe that is one that comes from outside funding sources or a combination thereof. But until there's a funding source identified, it really can't be placed on the list as far as timing when it'll be completed.
And the process for making it a higher priority would be with the planning committee?
The planning committee begins, and then the board is the ultimate decision making.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yes. Hello, my name is Nancy Turnier. I think the plans look very interesting. My question for you involves the funding. I see on the chart, you, at the bottom line, had an existing loan going down to very low. What I do not see and would appreciate is what is projected for the amount of loans that are going to have to be taken out to do all of this work, and how that will affect us with the payments that will have to be made on those loans. Because I believe, as everybody knows here, if Golden Rain has a problem meeting obligations for loans, then the people in the mutuals must pay. So I would appreciate the forecast of what kind of loans you're talking about to do all this work.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So currently, Golden Rain Foundation has 3 loans against that are funded from the trust. Again, they were to fund this one, the Creekside complex, and the last one was for the fitness center. Those are reflected in the bottom here. And then the point where new loans would need to be taken out would be when in 2027, when the 18 million plus for replacement of the MOD building. And the projection right now is just under 13 million would need to be. But that is also the time when the first 2 loans drop off. So that is when the thinking that we would have capacity to maybe add that funding. Again, that is subject to approval by the bank and everything else, but that is the potential. The loans are paid for through the Trust Estate Fund, which is funded by the collection of the membership transfer fee. It is not through the coupon.
Hi, Jeff. My name is Rich Giesner. I'm on Ptarmigan Drive. And
You
my
step
question
a little
is,
closer to the mic, Rich.
hello, my name is Rich Giesner. I live on Ptarmigan Drive. And my question is about the GRF properties. I understand we have properties outside of our boundaries. One example is where the gardens are. And I believe we own a building behind the Bank of America, used to be John Muir Clinic. Is that true?
So Golden Rain Foundation does own the property where the Rossmoor Gardens currently are located, as well as the medical facility that you discussed that is currently for sale in through that process.
Does that money then, if it's sold, go to Golden Rain Foundation for pay for some of these projects?
Exactly.
Do the revenue collected, like from the RV and the golf fees, does that go to Golden Rain also?
Any revenue from RV rentals or for greens fees goes into the operating fund.
For those facilities?
They're not dedicated for those facilities. It goes into the overall operating fund. It helps offset, overall costs associated with those facilities.
My last question is the repair of the infrastructure. I get several Nixle warnings a week about water repairs up on Golden Rain or in that area. Is that from MOD funds or GRF funds?
That would be from Central Sanitation or from East Bay Mud. The utility districts own the pretty much whatever is underground that comes from the central lines, laterals and so forth are typically by the mutuals, but the main lines that you get so many notices about, those typically are associated with either East Bay Mud or Central Sand. Laterals and others are.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry to make you hobble.
Oh, that's okay. I'm Lynn Foret, and I think you guys have done an amazing job creating all of this for us to see in transparency. One thing I didn't see mentioned that I was curious about, and maybe it's not feasible and you already crossed it off the list a long time ago, but I would love to see separate lanes for bicycles and golf carts. And I don't know how far back you can push on the main drags of Tice Creek and Rossmoor Parkway. And I don't know if that's feasible to push the sidewalks over to the lawn areas and create actual bike lanes and golf cart lanes for people. I think it would be a huge improvement.
Yeah, that actually was discussed as I believe early on in this plan, but also was discussed as a separate item. And we also talked about what's called sharrows, specific markings that a roadway is shared by both bicycle and vehicles. The cost to push sidewalks back and easements and realignment would be massive. So that wasn't considered, but different markings in the streets is certainly something we are also continuing to do. Pedestrian safety projects, and those are running separate. But to have dedicated lanes, it just wasn't feasible.
I'm back on water reclamation. I'm new. My name is Susan Champaniero and live on Ptarmigan, and contemplating a move to Cactus. And my concern about the water reclamation is, of course, location and the effect that will have on property values in Rossmoor. That's one important thing. The other thing is this facility and how much water it actually will reclaim. We're still a fairly small community, is that study going to look at possibly moving it out of Rossmoor or further away from our residents, but combining it with the city of Walnut Creek or some private entity or East Bay Mud or something that will make Walnut Creek and the reclamation facility benefit as many of our neighbors and of us as possible?
Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to answer your question because you've tapped into a topic that we could probably spend the next 4 hours on just scratching the surface. Water reclamation is a very, very complex. There's regional aspects, there's local aspects, there's drought management, there's location of the facility, there's, I mean, there's very, very complex. We just spent about 2 hours with the planning committee before this meeting talking about that. We'll be before the board talking about that. There will be many, many opportunities for input. I'd be happy to talk to you any time offline, but it just would take too long to address today.
Okay, thank you.
But we are addressing all of those things you just mentioned.
My name is Changlin Dillingham, and I have a couple of questions. Now, I find most the proposed plans by ELS seem to be reasonable, except I find the site plan for the amphitheater near the dollar pool being very awkwardly sited. And I was wondering why we do not just remodel the site of the existing stage is a good place. Where they put the amphitheater is not only very awkward, it also hasn't taken into consideration how it relates to the potential pickleball courts. So I think that part, since you said this is still flexible, I would like them to reconsider the stage renovation as a project. The second question is, the Tice Creek itself, I know there's been study done for the erosion control, but the creek itself is also not very healthy. There's a lot of invasive plants, and so somehow that creek should be a project, but I think to be looked at, and even including maybe a walking path right along the creek. And then I know to clean up the creek involves a lot of state agencies, but so does most of our plans will involve a lot of approval. So I would like to suggest that one to be included as a project consideration. And by the way, you had one phrase about drought management, and what does that mean?
So I'll try and go through those. The amphitheater, again, was not identified as a project to keep on the list. However, as I mentioned with the dollar patio, none of this has been into the design phase. These are all schematic. If the board at some point said, we want to pursue the amphitheater, for example, we would then at that point hire an architect, begin the design process, which would include the exact siting of it. We would work with the community on input, the parameters of what that project would include, and then it would move forward. This is just high-level schematic, what may it look like. In terms of the creek projects, that certainly is something that is noted. There's a number of projects I'm sure that could be added to this list. And as we continue to roll forward, or new thoughts come up that can be adjusted. And then your last,
the drought management.
Oh, the drought. Thank you. The drought management plan. We are in a mega drought. We are looking at ways of conserving, both on in conjunction with the water reclamation. On ways to conserve, both on the golf course as well as general GRF property. So those funds would be to continue that plan, to implement different methodology, whether it be irrigation, replacement of turf, and so forth.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go one more, and then we'll see if some folks online before we go back. So go ahead.
Oh, hi. My name's Lynn Baginski. I live up on Ptarmigan, and I'm new. So I've been going through the financial documents of the Golden Rain Foundation, and I wanted to dovetail on what the lady had to say about debt. I'm concerned about the amount of debt that's being placed on the new projects, which all sound lovely. I mean, lots of fun, spend money, make good things. But there's a considerable amount of debt on these financial statements, and I'm guessing those are as a result of work that's been done previously. And the way I read them, these are not very well written, but it seems like there's balloon payments, one due in 2027, one due in 2029, one due in 33. Now, they may be fully amortized loans. This document doesn't indicate it, nor does it indicate the bank that carries these loans, excuse me, or the amount of collateral and what they're collateralized by. So I think those are important points from a lender and from an ownership perspective, that we know how those trade. Because if things fall behind, it affects all of us. And then when there is a shortage of money, it has to come from someplace. And if people aren't buying residence, for example, there isn't that money coming in on the membership fee, and money is due to the banks, and therefore that means assessments, as best I can tell. So I'm concerned about that. Second thing is, being a new person, I've had the opportunity to go around and try and get involved in a number of things and meet people. And one of the things I've discovered is that a lot of people are not happy with the fitness level of teaching. That we have these people, these club people who teach, they're not professional teachers. We have to go off campus, so to speak, and pay people in order to get quality instructors. And with the amount of money that's being paid here, the $950 a month, I would think that that could be reevaluated, where there at least are some professional yoga teachers and some professional other kinds of teachers that would be available to the members here. So, and then finally, you can't get into the clay studio. You got to take sub-premium golf times because of the golf tournament times that get all the premium times. And those people pay money, I get it. So my thoughts are, maybe we try and zero in on what we've got and make it work a little bit better for the amount of money that's being paid by the members. That's all.
Okay. So there's two different aspects to what you were just talking about. One, there's the operational side of things, which is related to your monthly coupon and GRF's portion of that monthly coupon. So your monthly coupon consists of a GRF portion and then your mutual portion. The GRF portion pays for things like the fitness center, the bus, the recreation department, and general operations, separate from your mutual. Every year, the Golden Rain Foundation Board considers the GRF portion of the coupon and adopts the budget for the upcoming year. There is consideration in September. There is a presentation to the board and the finance committee on any new programs and services. If there is interest to add new services or expand existing services, those proposals could come to the board. They impact your overall coupon. So for example, your interest being at fitness, if that was expanded, it would impact everybody's coupon. The board has to weigh the interest of all of these various aspects in the overall scheme of things, since it is a shared cost system. It actually wouldn't. That's a separate. So the other portion of what you're talking about is our capital fund. Capital fund comes from the membership transfer fee that you pay when you move into Rossmoor. It was $10,000, it is currently $12,000. The debt that you're referring to is right here. The loans, this is the payment on the loans. We have 3 outstanding loans. They begin to drop off, 2 of them here, and then this is the proposed new loan to fund this one project. This all comes out of the trust estate fund, not the operating fund, which is tied to your membership transfer fee. I'm not sure what you're holding up. So what I would encourage you, if you have individual things like that, especially if you're new, we can sit down individually with you. You can come to the finance committee meeting, or certainly there's always opportunities to get involved. But in relation to the master plan and the funding sources from the trust estate fund, not the operating fund, not your coupon, It is detailed right here in terms of the existing loans, proposed new loans. That hasn't been applied for yet, hasn't been approved yet. In the overall planning, that's what that represents. These are existing to build this facility, the fitness center, and so forth. I'm going to go to folks that are waiting online before we come back to, second questions.
Alrighty.
Javier, do we have some folks online?
Yeah, we have 5 people who signed up for questions. First in line is Don McGregor. Don, if you can hear me, please unmute your mic and you can go ahead and ask your question. Don, it looks like he is not here anymore, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the second person. Second person on the list was Dale Harrington. Dale, if you want, go ahead and unmute your mic and you can ask your question.
Yes, thank you. Jeff, it is my understanding that the medical facility in the past has been at least a portion of the security that the banks look to for making loans to us. Once we sell the medical facility, then am I correct that it would rely almost exclusively on the membership transfer fee and the money that we get off of that fee?
So it is paid for through the trust estate fund. Resources going into the trust estate fund in the past have included the membership transfer fee as well as rental fee from the medical facility. The medical facility being outside the gate in a property that could be sold is part of the security for a loan. It is not funding the loan. So if there was a default, they would have a security to go back on. Once that is sold, then the only security really is the revenue going into the membership transfer fee. That is something that the bank would, ultimately consider. We have a good relationship with our existing bank and Mechanics Bank, but ultimately that would be a commercial bank, would need to evaluate that and determine what level of funding they would consider for future projects. Is there another online question?
All right, next in line we have Carol Weed. Carol, you can go ahead and unmute your mic and ask your question.
Yes, hello and thank you. Has GRF considered tying into the purple pipes that were laid underneath the Tice Valley Boulevard that could carry in the future recycled water?
So we have looked in regards to recycled water. There has been some regional studies done by Central Sand. They are the purveyor for recycled water. Their central plant in Martinez brings water, recycled water as far as Pleasant Hill, but does not provide recycled water to this region. To do so, they have determined through their recent study would be infeasible at this time. We certainly are on board with regional planning that would bring recycled water to this area and would encourage those agencies and would love those agencies to undertake such a project, but currently that is not in either East Bay Mud or Central Sands plans.
Alrighty, next in line we have Karen Larkin. You can go ahead and unmute your mic, Karen. All right, Karen, I see you're in the lobby. Can you please unmute your mic? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the next person is Ed K. Ed, you can unmute your mic and ask your question.
Sure. And thank you very much for this presentation. I have a question concerning the idea that was presented earlier about doing a needs assessment. And the answer to that was indicated that you use current, more of an interest-based approach in light of, allocating resources. Well, the whole purpose of this presentation is to is to how you allocate money, since money is a fixed resource. And I'm concerned about something like land. Land is also a fixed resource, and yet you are using an interest-based approach to allocate land. It would seem to me to use pickleball as an example, if you're not monitoring the extent of usage of our current asset, pickleball courts, how can you determine what size facility to build? Will you not, how do you know you're not going to overbuild pickleball facilities if you're not monitoring the need?
So in terms of pickleball, we can certainly look to national trends as pickleball is the fastest growing sport for seniors in the nation. We could look at the expansion of pickleball courts at neighboring communities such as the Villages in San Jose relative to the number of people that live there, to the Lincoln Hills community comparative to the number of people there and how many courts. We can evaluate the number of people that are members of the pickleball club and anticipate what may be future growth in that sport based on those national trends. We can look at current usage combined with the Tice Creek facility. We need to account for the fact that the existing outdoor courts are not covered, that heat plays a role into how long outdoor facilities are used based on comfort and weather. We could evaluate the existing condition of the outdoor courts, that they are not in safe condition for ongoing use, so that many people decide not to use those. So there is a slew of factors that can go into the assessment. What I talked about earlier was, Rossmoor is based on a variety of interests in the shared cost process, and pickleball certainly is a growing sport that has a lot of demands. So,
All right, so we have two more questions online. The next in line, Karen Larkin, she's back, so she's going to ask her question. Karen Larkin, you can now unmute your mic.
Hey, hold on. Shit.
Okay, it looks like she is, okay, she's here. All right, Karen, you're live.
Karen, this is your moment.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear
We
you.
can hear you.
Okay. Basically, my question is, thank you for having this master plan and getting input from the Rossmoor residents, and hopefully there'll be opportunities to contribute ongoing. I'd like to know about you have a business case for each of these projects, especially the ones that are in the shorter term.
I'm sorry, I did not get that question.
Do you have a business case for each of the projects that you're considering in the short term?
In terms of a business case, you mean justification for those various projects?
Yeah, in particular, a project, just like a business and IT, the people have to put together a business case before funds and people are allocated. Like, what's the value? What are the risks? What are the benefits, etc.?
So as I talked about these projects earlier, there's a number of criteria that goes into them, whether it be accessibility, code compliance, interest from the community, funding availability, and so forth, current condition, trends, a number of different aspects that go into it. If you look at those projects on the immediate need, the dollar exterior accessibility, and certainly that would be based on code assessment and access into the facility and condition of the patio. As you look at the studio renovations, that project has been in the works for many, many years now, based on evaluation of the existing facilities, time that they were constructed, use, space constraints, and so forth. The determination was made that those needed upgrades. The water reclamation has been an ongoing study and is still in the study phase. The pickleball courses I just kind of went through as far as determining need. The bocce surfacing was a matter of the existing surface was not available, so there was a ability to replace that with a artificial surface to continue to make that existing resource available. And access control has been a board priority for some time in terms of being able to secure our facilities for member use and interest.
Is there any way we can see these documents for the criterion that was used for each of them?
So we do not have individual business plans for each of them as you're referring to. There is a write-up when the board considers funding. There is a description of the project, a presentation on the project, and then we proceed and develop the project further once funding is allocated.
Well, that's not a usual business practice in my experience. For instance, with the pickleball, if it's say 1.5 million and you've got 300 people, you're spending $5,000 a person. And I say 300 because they might say 500, but how many are paying and active? I was a member and I'm no longer active. I'm probably counted in that 500.
So I see that there is some focus on pickleball. I don't want to keep focusing on one individual sport, but as I've mentioned now several times, all of Rossmoor's facilities, if we went based on usage data, we would have very few facilities in Rossmoor. How many people use the studios? How many people use the fitness center that we just spent $10 million on? Less than a third of the population. How many people play golf? How many people play tennis? How many people use these other facilities? If we went purely on a usage basis, there would be very few facilities. The reason Rossmoor is the wonderful community and the broad spectrum of events is because of that shared cost system that we look out and provide resources for a variety of interest groups.
All right, next on the list we have Karen Perkins. Karen Perkins, you can go ahead and ask your question, and then we have one more after that, and then we'll close up online questions.
I think I have two, but I'll try to be brief. I still really don't get it. The needs assessment, I thought at least there was either a pool or the fitness center where there was data being taken at the center, clicking how many people were using it at what times. I mean, if 1/3 of the people use it, I think that's enough. But if not, if very small, 1/8 of the people, 1/12, I mean, I don't see why usage would mean we would have very few facilities. I think it's only common sense in a way to say that you want to know if these facilities are being used, when could other people reschedule if they're not at certain hours. Anyway, that was one. The second one was about the water reclamation project, which sounds much nicer put that way than a sewage system or than a sewer reclamation project. But I did read in the Rossmoor News about somebody in Cactus Court neighborhood that it was going to be, it's already being planned to perhaps be in their neighborhood. And there's been many letters in the Rossmoor News objecting to having it here because of odor and other reasons that I haven't paid, that I don't remember actually. But I would like some explanation because we're a fairly large part of Walnut Creek. So we have a lot of clout in Walnut Creek because we're 10,000 people and we vote. And the gist of it is, I don't see why we can't be hooked up with Central San or some regional or the EBMUD or whatever with these purple pipes, because that seems to me a far more efficient way of going and spending $18 million on our own private sewer reclamation project. Thank you.
So again, the water reclamation project is a much bigger discussion. Regionally planning, certainly residents of Rossmoor can advocate. It is not a city, but a Central San utility district or a East Bay Mud utility district question. They have done regional studies. They have looked at the cost to bring water to this area, recycled water. Right now, their board has not determined that to be a feasible thing. Certainly, we are working and advocating for more central regional solutions, but those are not in the pipeline right now.
All right, the last question we have for online is Pat K. Pat, you can go ahead and unmute your mic.
Okay, hello, my name is Pat Casavan. I live on Ptarmigan Entry 1, and I have a comment more than a question. It seems to me that there's a difference in terminology that's being used. And I think that at the risk of maybe being boring to some people, I'd like to just state that I have an MBA and I also have a background in IT, and I understand what the comments about needs assessment and business case, what the people are referring to. And Jeff, I'm not sure whether that's a common terminology that's being used within GRF or not. I think you guys are doing those things, but you're not formalizing them. What a needs assessment and a business case is a formal format for talking about why you want to do a project at all, which would be like the needs assessment. What good is it doing? What's the background to it? What are the other possible solutions to whatever the problem is that you're trying to fix? And that problem could just be adding more recreational opportunity. And then you look at the, for each of the possibilities, one would look at the benefits and the risks of going ahead, or the benefits of or risks of not doing anything with that, and then comparing the different options. I think that GRF is doing that, but it's not being documented in the kind of format that is being asked for. And I think the way that traditionally has been done with GRF, and in the 1950s and 60s, there was plenty of money to throw around. There is not now. And I think that's what the concern is coming up with people, is that, first of all, our properties, this place was built for, middle to low income people, and now it's a place for millionaires. And people are concerned about additional cost. Inflation is, the highest it's been in 40 years or whatever they're saying. And there's no end in sight. And we have limited resources. We have limited dollars, and we have limited land, and we have limited staff. And so I think that what people are talking about is sort of getting the biggest bang for our buck. And if GRF could talk to any of your staff that's got an MBA, I know Tim knows this stuff, that there is that format. And to the extent that the GRF committees or whoever is doing this could put it in that kind of format, then the greater number of people that are moving here that understand those terminologies can look at it, and you guys can talk apples and apples instead of apples and oranges. So that's just my comment. I apologize if I've talked down to anybody. I didn't mean to do that. I was meaning to kind of bring the language together. That's all.
All right, and that concludes our online questionnaire portion.
Okay, so we'll tackle these three, and then we got to...
I'm Mary Ann Clark again, and I do agree that a needs assessment is important. And I might also say that I think COVID has impacted the usage of the facilities. I haven't used the fitness center or the art studio since COVID started, so I wouldn't be included, but I would want to go back to it. So anyway, my original thought was about the nature path, the walking path. And I noticed that the recipients of the survey, actually, the amount of people that wanted one was 70%. And yet I don't see anything on the plan addressing a walking path. And I just hope that Rebecca Pollin's plan is somewhere that we can access, because she had a very good idea in terms of a master plan for a walking path. And I think that it would add value to Rossmoor, and other senior communities are using that as a benefit of living in their communities. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Peter Newell. I too want to compliment you on engaging in this long-range planning process. I think it's valuable, and I see all the work that's gone into it, and I think that you guys are doing a wonderful job. My question has to do with the water reclamation plant, which on that spreadsheet is $12,100,000. But I heard you say earlier that that has gone to $18 million. Could you explain what's driving the 50% increase in that cost?
So that is one of the important factors of this spreadsheet, is that it is something that needs to be updated annually based on new information. The water reclamation, as we've developed the plan, we're able to do better cost estimates. We are facing right now a double-digit increase in construction costs in this region. Inflation has been spiking. The new cost estimates based on updated design capacity, as well as updated costs from what the construction industry is doing over the last year and projected moving forward, has caused the cost estimate to be increased.
So in essence, what you're saying is this is the same project that was originally contemplated, but it's going to cost 50% more than you thought it was a year ago?
Well, not quite 50%, but yes, there is a significant increase. And like I mentioned, we just had about a 2-hour conversation with the planning committee about that. And the board will be discussing that again at the end of this month. It has not been approved to move to construction phase. That is why, looking at options, regional options, looking at funding for drought mitigation planning and projects is so important as well. But it has not been approved for construction at this point.
In the online presentation that you made available to us, there was a statement that there was a consideration for undergrounding the water reclamation plant. Is that part of that increased cost?
No. I think in terms of what the consultant Jim Breezak had mentioned at that point is a building itself that houses the plant could potentially be put underground, but that would be exponentially more costly to do so.
That would be above the 18 million if that were done, is that correct?
If you were to take that construction approach.
And there was also a mention of water storage being planned at this point. Is that considered in the 18 million?
I think we mentioned that we looked at the ability for water storage in the water table and determined that that was not an option based on our profile. That was one of the early things that we studied, if that's what we're talking about. But storage of water capacity is not included in that.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Elaine Cady, Ptarmigan Drive, entry 17. Sorry not to let go of pickleball, but since it's been brought up again and again, I have never heard discussed what was used in my elementary school and my high school, multi-use of facilities. And I would like one option to be this very room that we're in, that much of the time is unused, since I use the swimming pool often, the one close by, and I see that this is not being used. And if there are a number of people ready for pickleball, in 5 minutes they could put up a net and keep the stuff on the side. It's just one option that I haven't heard considered, and it's
free. We own it already. So, thank you.
It has been considered. Just about every option you can think of has been considered. Okay, last comment.
I just have one quick question. Is there, perhaps I'm missing it, but is there recognition on this spreadsheet of the expected revenue from the sale of property?
The revenue from the sale of the medical center has not been added to this until such time as we have secured that, and then we'll add that. And then adjustments as far as priorities or project classifications can be made, but no, it has not. Yeah, that's at this point, because we are in a sales agreement, that information is confidential.
I just have to say one thing. I have to say one thing. Why don't we just become an entity of a city of our own? We've got fire right outside. We've got Securitas. The taxes that we pay to the county, the portion to Walnut Creek will come right back to Rossmoor. We have more people that live here than live in Corte Madera. Why don't we just become a city? I'll run for mayor.
Okay, thank you all for coming. I know there's a lot of questions and probably didn't hit every answer. Certainly, if you would like to follow up, I am available.